Good evening and welcome to Watchung Hill students and parents on this nice and sunny and I think 90-degree weather evening here, at least in my town. I know we have some college reps joining us from around the country, so I'm not sure if everybody's in 90-degree weather right now. But I do know that the community and the parents and students are on the call tonight. Thank you for coming and joining us. And we do have a good turnout tonight, despite the beautiful, maybe a little too warm weather. Again, thank you. We have the school counselors and I this evening on the college panel. I am Jason Sabino, the Director of School Counseling here at Watchung Hills, for those who I have not yet had the chance to meet. From coming to you today from my basement, but hopefully next year it'll be in person. I'm glad to be on this call with members of the counseling team this evening, including Ms. Lauren Saget, who will be leading the panel this night and asking questions for everyone. Additionally, we have Mrs. Kruger and Mr. Carmenini on the call, and they will help us moderate questions and any things that come in at the appropriate times when we can take breaks to get questions in, or as things come up to you, feel free to use the Q&A, which I'm sure at this point for many of you, you've become familiar with Zoom. I think last year at this time, we were kind of coaching people through the process. I don't feel the need to do that, but if you have any questions, feel free to click on the Q&A box below and put in any questions you have for our panelists this evening. Finally, I know we have the great turnout tonight, thanks to the college panelists who are on the call from Rutgers, Lehigh, Ithaca, Indiana, and Duke. And Lauren will introduce them very shortly. I know it's been a long and unique administration cycle and admission cycle rather, and I'm generally appreciative of the support and commitment that the college panel this evening is showing our students, our community, and the team for being on the call. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. Saget to take it away and start our panel. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sabino. So I just wanted to go through and show you if my computer will start working, our agenda for this evening. Where, like Mr. Sabino said, we'll do some introductions. We'll talk a little bit about campus visit options, updates to application for the upcoming year, information about testing. We'll have opportunity for question and answers, and then for our admission representatives to just share some parting thoughts before the end of the evening. So first, if you want to go around and just briefly introduce yourself and highlight whatever you would like about your campus to our junior and sophomore students and families. And maybe we'll go in order of here. This is an alpha order, so that might be the easiest way to go. Kathy, if we want to start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Phillips, an Associate Dean in the Undergrad Admissions Office at Duke. I'm also the New Jersey Regional Rep and have been for over 20 years. So I feel like New Jersey is my second home, although I'm a native of Pennsylvania, but I've lived here in North Carolina for over 30 years. So this is now home. And our weather's actually cooler than up there. So that's kind of remarkable tonight. And I will turn things over to another colleague. Oh, I guess you want me to say something about the school. Sorry about that. I guess I would say that we like to say that at Duke, college is a verb. And so what we mean by that is that your learning experience is one that you will help shape and that you will be immersed in. And so I encourage you to, if you're interested in us, to go to our website and check out a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brandy Samaru, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions for my alma mater, Indiana University, which is located in Bloomington, Indiana. I am regionally based in New Jersey, so I am enjoying the 90-degree weather with you all as well. I have been with the Office of Admissions for about 17 years, and I've been out on the East Coast for about 9 now. So you will read all of your applications should you choose to apply to IU. There's so much information we could share about our institutions, but there's also so much online that you can learn about our institutions. Just know that we are here for you. So if you have those questions, please reach out to us. I always like to say that flexibility and exploration are key at our institutions, especially when you're talking about some large schools. So just reach out and let us know if you have questions tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Henyon. I'm an admission counselor at Ithaca College. I work primarily with students in the great state of New Jersey, so all of you, and also students in the Finger Lakes region of Central New York, which is where Ithaca College is located. I am an alum of Ithaca College. I have undergraduate and graduate degrees from our School of Music, and I spent about 11 years as a vocal music teacher, so I'm familiar with the high school side of things. And I guess, if I had to pick two things to highlight about Ithaca College, although we'll talk a lot more about it tonight, I would say that, we're a liberal arts institution, so we can pretty much help you study anything you might be interested in studying. And we really focus on hands-on learning from day one in your field. So it's really about our students learning by doing. And I think that was two things, but I'm going to say one more thing, is that we live in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful part of the country. Lauren's nodding her head because, or Miss Saget is nodding her head because she told me she spent quite a bit of time in Ithaca. So I know she knows a lot about it as well. And it is currently 79 degrees here, which I would say, I'll take that over 90, but I'll take sunshine over, the last 5 months as well. So thanks for having me tonight. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindy Fike. I'm an admissions counselor here at Lehigh University. I started at Lehigh in November of 2019, so I'm kind of new to the game, but I'm very excited. I'm the one that hopefully will get to visit your area in the fall. I'm the one that reviews your application, and I'm struggling to come up with a short, sweet thing to talk about regarding Lehigh, but if I had to say anything, we do put an emphasis on our dynamic community, and what that means is our students are involved in a variety of aspects. We have an emphasis on flexibility both in the classroom and outside of the classroom too. So again, if you're interested in Lehigh, I encourage you to check out our website for all of our visit opportunities, both virtual and in person.
Okay, I think I'm up now. Hi, it's great to be here with you this evening. My name is Annette Medeiros. I am from the admissions office at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. And Jenny, I'm going to be coming to Ithaca this summer for the first time, and I am so excited. I really can't wait to see the area. But yeah, a little bit about New Brunswick. We are the flagship of the university system. There are two smaller campuses, one in Newark and one in Camden. New Brunswick is home to more than 30,000 undergraduate students. So I think I'm the biggest school, maybe Indiana, I don't know, the biggest school here. So we have 11 different schools in New Brunswick, 7 of which students can apply to directly out of high school. So we have a huge liberal arts school with more than 100 majors and minors and certificate programs. But then we also have professional schools for engineering, pharmacy, fine and performing arts, environmental and biological sciences, business, and nursing. When you apply to Rutgers, you can actually apply to up to 3 of those schools on one application. So you can put down multiple choices and you could be admitted to multiple schools, or you could get different decisions to different schools. If you've not been on the New Brunswick campus, I do hope you'll be coming sometime soon, and we'll talk about visiting, I think, over the course of this evening. But we do have 5 beautiful campuses in New Brunswick that are connected by an inter-campus bus system. It's really easy to get around, and the campuses really kind of create smaller neighborhood communities for students. So you feel like you're part of a smaller community, but at the same time, you're part of this big state U environment. We are also like the premier research university in the state of New Jersey with 150 different research centers and institutes on our campuses. And we are also the Big Ten school in the state of New Jersey. So a lot of excitement with Big Ten athletics. And we are really looking forward to this fall having our students back on campus, 16,000 strong in our residence halls again. The campus is so energetic and lively when the students are in those residence halls. So we are looking forward, I said, like about 16,000 students living on campus again. So anyway, yeah, looking forward to talking with you more.
Great. And again, thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time to be here with us tonight. We really appreciate it. So moving into campus visits, I know a lot of our juniors are really anxious to get out there and see, campuses in person. Some of them have been taking advantage of your virtual options. So what options do you have right now or upcoming? And in the visit option, the virtual option area, do you think that those are going to be here to stay for our sophomores and freshmen and so on and so forth?
Do you want to just,
Sure, whoever wants to jump in first.
okay. So we expect, I think the virtual visit options are definitely here to stay. I mean, we can't wait to have people back on campus. I mean, we're definitely going back to on campus, but you know, how wonderful is it that a student in California can just hop on a tour, you know, virtually, right? So we've actually seen that there's been some real positives that came out of this whole experience. So I think virtual options are going to continue, but of course we're going to want you back on campus. And I think for the summer, like right now, we're basically in a quiet period because the students are done with the semester. So sometime in June, we'll start up some prospective student visits. Again, we will have virtual, but we are hoping, we don't have a calendar yet, but we are hoping to have some small group walking tours, a small group back on campus. We usually hold, you know, bus tours, but you know, that ain't coming back right now. So we're hoping to do some small walking tours this summer and into the fall. So I think you will have opportunities to come to campus. We also allow people to just come, obviously, just you can drive around on your own. We have a walking tour, an app that you can follow, a tour that you can follow online virtually. And so you're always welcome to come to campus and do that, as long as you're, you know, observing the health protocols of mask wearing and social distancing.
Yeah, so at Ithaca College, we have in-person tours starting in June, which we're really excited about, and they'll go through, you know, August and through forever. And we have two options, so you can have a guided or a self-guided, and they're going to be primarily outside, and yes, wearing masks and all of that good stuff. But we also, sort of like Annette was saying, you know, virtual, I think probably everyone on this panel would agree virtual is here to stay. For many, many good reasons. And so we are offering virtual appointments with admission counselors, faculty members, students. When the semester was still going on, we were able to, you know, welcome prospective students to take a virtual class. So I could imagine that will be possible potentially in the fall. And then we also offer virtual information sessions, like general sessions or sessions by school, because we have 5 different schools. So lots of ways to get to know us. But yes, in-person tours will be happening over the summer.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm completely agreeing with everything that's been said, but maybe just a couple different twists on things. Obviously, well, we have not been open, and we've been pretty restrictive in discouraging people from visiting during the time that our campus has been closed. We do also hope to open for tours, primarily tours this fall and through the year. So I think the virtual piece will be that the information sessions, open houses, things like that, that used to be in person will likely be online. And so the twist that I was going to say is that a lot of us are also consider traveling to the regions that schools are in and visiting schools, doing programs there. And I expect that that will be greatly reduced because people want to come see college campuses. And so while we'll continue to offer virtual, I expect that if there's anything that we will be dialing back, it will likely be some of that in-person travel, in my case, to New Jersey. And then when you ask about the question of demonstrated interest, and I think for schools that follow demonstrated interest, virtual visits most certainly count toward that. Not everyone is able to visit colleges in person. We recognize that. Doing your homework about why you're applying to a college, whether a college is formally tracking demonstrated interest or just trying to get a sense of how well you have considered the fit, then I would say that, you know, all of that can be gained by using virtual visits just as much as visiting in person.
Brandy and Lindy, was there anything else you wanted to add about visit options, or you know, how you schedule them? Are they on your admissions website in the same area as, you know, your regular visit options would have been?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're right there where our regular visits are. We are currently offering small outdoor tours only. So you can register for those. Those will go throughout the summer. They are very small, and we are following all the safety protocols and COVID guidelines right now. But I agree with my colleagues. I think virtual is here to stay. I think it's a great option for students that can't get to our campuses to still get that information. And it has actually opened up more doors, like some of my colleagues were saying, in the fact that students can sit down with a current student virtually and chat with them, which they hadn't necessarily had that opportunity to do in the past. So I think it's here to stay, but just continue to check school websites because we are slowly opening up and getting things back to normal. We want you on our campuses. We want you to feel that excitement.
Yes, I mean, at this point, I'm just going to sound like a broken record, but we are offering in-person tours starting in June throughout the summer. But I will say, kind of piggybacking off of what Brandy said about virtual visits, we've been able to highlight different offices and different groups across campus that we wouldn't normally be able to do in person. So even if you're able to visit any of us throughout the summer, I would still recommend checking out the virtual visit opportunities just because, you know, we've been able to have the study abroad office have a session, financial aid host a session, whereas traditionally they don't. So even if you do get on campus, check out the virtual options. Everyone said student panels, talking to current students, different interests, different colleges. So I think they're great. I think it's opened up a lot of doors. We don't have to worry about scheduling different classrooms and finding space for these sessions, and you can just do it from the comfort of your home too. So I think it's important to balance both the in-person and virtual as you go through your search.
Is there anything else? I heard masks, social distancing, anything else that folks should know about the safety protocols that are in place right now go as visitors, or also, you know, in terms of safety precautions that are in place as, you know, schools are thinking about opening up for the fall in terms of method of instruction, vaccination requirements, and all of that other stuff that's on the horizon.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just read the information we provide carefully because there is a lot of stuff on there. Like at Ithaca College, you have to fill out a health screening ahead of time and then the day of and things like that. So just as much as we don't like reading directions because we've been on a screen and everything has been us reading from a screen, just pay attention to all of that. Make sure you register in advance too. That's probably true for all of the other colleges here, is that we can't allow walk-ins. So that's an important piece too. Sorry, Brandy, go ahead.
Yeah, no, everything you just said. And then as far as like fall goes and students actually coming to campus and moving on, a lot of stuff is still TBD, to be determined. We are definitely going to be in the classes. That's been determined, but as far as other protocol and safety protocol, we're still looking at that and how we can get as many students back on campus as possible. We require freshmen to live on campus, and this year we want all of our freshmen to be back on campus. So we're still kind of looking at some safety protocol to see how that's going to play out. Ideally, most of us are going to have that outlined by July 1 before everybody's going to come to campus. So continue, again, read, look at our websites. That's going to be key.
And then I know Kathy had mentioned before about, you know, virtual interests, visits counting to demonstrate interest and, you know, to continue to utilize that. Any other ways that these students should be thinking about demonstrating interest at this point in their process or moving into the fall if they're, you know, if your schools are starting to move high up on their list of places they want to go?
I'll go ahead and comment again first. So I think that students have the idea that a lot of schools want them to reach out to their regional admissions officers just to kind of say, hey, I'm interested. That might matter for perhaps some smaller schools. I think would guess that the larger schools are not necessarily able to handle that volume of contact. So if you have definitely have a question, by all means, reach out. We will try to answer it. I know that we are having a lot of staff change this summer. So while I hope to continue with New Jersey, a lot of regions will be shifted a little bit. So you just maybe hold some of those questions. But one of the things that I thought was particularly notable was that we ask a short answer supplemental question about why you're applying, as do many colleges. And I found this year's responses to be a lot more substantive than many previous years, where, you know, students would just kind of recite back to us what they read in the literature, what they saw in a session or a program in your area. But I found students to really be digging into areas of interest to them. And so I feel like the choices students made were much more thoughtful. So I don't want that to get lost in the going back to normal. You know, I think you should still really do your homework about the schools you're applying to and just see how those schools academically, first and foremost, can meet your needs.
So really being able to like do your research and then show within the components of the application that they really love and know your schools and that there are specific reasons why they think they're the best fit to go there. Anyone else?
I'll just kind of quickly say that we definitely encourage students, to visit once we're open again. Obviously, the virtual visits, we encourage you to email. You can call us. But we as Kathy was saying, the bigger schools, can't necessarily track demonstrated interest. And, at this time, we don't. So just to make you aware that not every school is tracking demonstrated interest.
To speak from a medium-sized school, to give a little bit of a different perspective, since we do have so many virtual visit opportunities and in-person opportunities now, I definitely think I prefer when a student finds those, reaches out afterwards and said, I went to the information session and then I went to the College of Business information session, but I would like to be connected with the student if you're able to, or I have a deeper question that you could maybe help me answer. So I think it is tough when students do just email and introduce themselves instead of following up with saying, hey, I took the time to attend these sessions and learn more about your school and I am really interested. Can you connect me with the student or can you tell me more about this specific thing that I heard? So we do track demonstrated interest at Lehigh, and we also have that Why Lehigh piece of the application that I believe Kathy was talking about too. And the best ones that are written are ones where you can really tell that the student took the time to dig deeper into the school. And I think we all can agree that if I can take the name like Lehigh out of the Why Lehigh essay and put any other school in and it works, then it's not well written. So if you write, I want to go to Lehigh because the campus is beautiful and the weather is perfect and the surrounding area is just what I'm looking for, that can be true for any of us for the most part. So definitely take your time, pay attention. You are trying to figure out what the right fit is, so do your research.
I think some students think that they're demonstrating interest when they apply really, really early, like before the start of the school year. Do you have anything to share about the way that your process works in terms of when applications are submitted and received?
So, at Rutgers, the application will be available sometime in August. We do have the early action November 1 due date and then the December 1 regular due date. And if you want to apply in August, that's great. We're very, very happy to get your application in August. But that does not put you at the front of the line. So the playing field is completely level up until December 1st. So everyone who applies by December 1st is going to be treated exactly the same for the process of admission for all of our schools, and also for the consideration for scholarships, honors programs, and our honors college. So again, it doesn't matter, you don't have an advantage if you applied on August 31st versus November 30th. Everybody by December 1 is treated the same. But, obviously we encourage you, get it in as early as you can, especially in the summertime, if you have a little extra time, work on it, get it off your plate before you get really busy in September again, right? So that could work to your advantage.
I would just add to that, I agree with that, and we are very similar. Any student that applies with our early action deadline, whether that's August 1 or whether that's November 1, you're looked at exactly the same. But just because you submit your application on August 1 does not mean you need to go to your guidance office and say, I need my transcript sent immediately. We will hold your application until we get that high school transcript. We know that on the East Coast, schools don't generally start until after Labor Day. So we wouldn't anticipate getting your high school transcript until after that. There is no panic. As long as you're following the rules put forth by your guidance counselors, as far as when you need to request that transcript to meet the school's deadlines, you're gonna be fine. So yes, applying early action usually does have some benefits at most schools. Get it in that time frame, but just because it's August 1 or November 1, it's going to be the same.
I think probably all of the schools represented here tonight have those specific deadlines, the November 1st for early action, or in Duke's case, early decision, maybe December dates, January dates. So in those cases, you aren't at an advantage, but there may, by applying earlier, but there may be some schools with rolling admissions deadlines where it does make a difference. And so just know what is the kind of program that you're hearing from, because there are going to be schools out there that will fill their classes on a rolling basis. So know what the deadlines are for your schools. One of the best things you can do is kind of create your own spreadsheet of the schools you're interested in, their deadlines, the types of decision plans, what the requirements are, what the test requirements are, if that is such a thing this year, and so forth. So just know that every school is going to be different. And so the answer is often, it depends. So, know what that's going to be for the different schools you're considering.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you made, Kathy, is like, just make yourself a little spreadsheet so that you know the differences that all schools have. And the other thing that I would add, and I agree with what everyone here has said, I would add the only, at least from the Ithaca College perspective, the only disadvantage you could have by waiting to submit your application, if you wait until, so our last deadline is February 1st for regular decision, and you're usually fine then, except we do have some really competitive programs that might fill up. And we also have some scholar programs and some scholarships where you actually can't apply to those until you've submitted your common application. And so you could run into a little bit of a timeline issue where if you haven't submitted your common application, the application deadline for that scholarship has actually already passed. So those are two examples, if we have some programs that might fill up by then and we can't accept any additional applications, or because of the timeline thing of some scholarships that you might just want to pay close attention to. And that's where early action, it would behoove you to sort of choose early action. Again, that's the Ithaca College perspective, but I'm guessing each college probably has some similar nuances there, just to pay attention to. And the best way for you to learn and make sure that you don't run into any of those issues is, use the website, but send us an email and we're happy to help you out with that.
Thank you. So any application updates that our juniors should be aware of that might be coming for next year, whether they're new questions, if you have your own application, or if you're Common App school, new questions that you're anticipating asking on your end of things. Also, I think that our students are curious about that COVID or the interruption question that was added last year that's going to be included, and how that may have successfully been utilized among students this year, in distinction from that additional information section or the personal statement / essay, or any other noteworthy pieces of the process that would help these classes on the call tonight. Lindy, did you want to jump in there first?
Sure. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that I unmuted myself. But yes, I'm happy to. So the additional or interruption piece that talks about COVID, it's there for a reason. Use it. I had a student last year who shared with me, I felt that I couldn't really use it because nothing super serious happened to my family, but she also felt that she was dealing with a lot of different, we all kind of did, mental drainage. And I said, put it down. If you feel that it adds to your application, it tells more of your story, add it. But I will say it's there, use it appropriately. Don't say, I really, missed my friends a lot. So it's kind of a balance. So it's there, take advantage of it, but appropriately so. As far as other application updates, we actually added a question to our supplemental questions, and we're calling it the community question, and it talks about how you would deal with and address issues of inequality, injustice, in your community. And a lot of students will ask us about this, like, what are you looking for here? And this was to kind of address that we want to make sure that the members that we are accepting into the Lehigh community are kind of going to uphold what we value. And we have our principles of equitable community on campus, and we just want to make sure that the students that we're inviting to join our community fall under that. So just think about this question, answer it honestly, there's no really, think about it. Lehigh itself is a predominantly white institution, so we have a lot of work to do to increase diversity and kind of create a better microcosm of the real world on campus. We obviously find value in a diverse community, so this is a chance to kind of talk about how you'd fit in there and what you would do to kind of speak to how you will contribute to our campus community in that sense. So those are kind of our two new pieces. But yeah.
Thank
I'll
you.
jump in and just say that, yeah, Rutgers this year, for the first time in history, we were test optional. I never thought I'd see the day. But yeah, so obviously we, as well as most schools, went test optional for the 2021 school year, 2021. And so we are going to continue that. So if you're a junior right now and you're going to be applying in the fall, just know that we will be test optional again. So that's your call if you want to submit ACT or SAT scores. We are not on the Common Application. Rutgers has its own application on our website, and we're also part of the Coalition for College platform. So you can use either one. We have no preference. On both applications, there is a question. It sounds like it's similar to what they have on the Common App, where we ask you to let us know how COVID may have impacted your life, be it financial, health, internet access, perhaps was spotty and you had issues with that. Or maybe you or your parent was an essential worker and that brought a lot of stress into your household, or financial issues. So, so again, like Lindy was saying, take advantage of that question to talk about how COVID may have impacted your school year this past year. Maybe virtual learning was really hard for you, and so, use it as an opportunity to talk about that. But I think that's about it. Nothing else really new except the SAT being optional, or the test being optional again.
And we are going to talk about testing more on the next slide as well.
I'll just jump in that there have been some changes to the Common Application itself in terms of questions about disciplinary actions, parents' countries of birth, a variety of things that they felt at the broad level may have been restricting some students and sort of taking away some opportunities for equity and access. And I will say that Duke is choosing to ask most of those questions on our supplemental questions, because we do feel like as a residential community, we want to know about students' disciplinary histories from them, since not all schools are able to share that information. Similarly, we think that sometimes knowing it is completely optional, but parents' country of birth can tell us a little bit about who you are, your upbringing, and that kind of thing. So that will change. I think you'll see some changes from school to school in who is asking the questions that have since been removed that used to be asked to everyone. We did last year extend our early decision deadline a couple of weeks into mid-November, but I think we're going back to our November 1st deadline. So recognizing that we're all feeling a little bit more settled this year. And I see the question about waitlist. An easy answer there is that we admitted some students from our waiting list. We have not yet canceled it out, but the whole process has been very similar. One thing I know a lot of students were asking about last year and through the application cycle is how students who chose to defer their enrollment, how that was going to affect things. We anticipate this year will be much like normal years in that some students choose to defer enrollment just for their own reasons, but it won't be the same numbers as we anticipate opening fully.
Anyone else want to add to any application changes before we move on to our next topic of extracurricular involvement? Students feel very compelled to be very involved. They have their passions and the things that they pursue outside of school. And for some students, this was impacted this year. So what advice would you provide for these students based on what you saw in the application cycle this year with the disruptions from the spring, how that may have continued on into the fall for our juniors and our sophomores on the call?
I will just start by saying we all experienced the last 14 months. So we do not expect that your life stayed the same. Our lives didn't stay the same either. So we would absolutely not expect that, your trajectory of what you participated in 9th and 10th grade is going to continue through 11th and 12th. Like we understand that there was things that happened. That said, my advice would be share that information on your applications. You can say, I was going to participate in this volunteer work or this sport or this, community service or this club, but it got shut down, or, you can talk about your intentions and what struggles, that caused due to COVID. So share that information. That kind of goes back to where we talked about that COVID impact statement, or even in the additional information section of the common application. And then the other thing I would say is that be creative in the ways in which you engage in extracurricular activities too. If you're, you still have things you want to do, whether it's for the purpose of your college application or not, there are lots of ways to be engaged virtually. And I would also say that and stress that not all activities need to be official activities, So for example, one of our actual current Ithaca College students had to give a presentation on her community service work to keep her scholarship. And she said, all the things I planned to do were canceled. So one Saturday every month I went out and I picked up trash or collected cans and bottles. Like, she found a way to do it. So it doesn't have to be something that's officially sponsored by a school or an organization or something like that. Get creative. So I would just share those two things. Yeah, be creative, think outside the box, but also let us know how, how COVID impacted your ability to engage in these things.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that and know that we know things changed, and sometimes those changes could be maybe you had to pick up extra responsibilities at home. Maybe you had to start taking care of siblings or grandparents, or maybe you had to go out and get a part-time job because you needed that extra income. These are unofficial activities that still count as activities. We know that you can balance additional things outside of the classroom. Again, share those things with us.
Thank you. And on to what the conversation that Annette started for us earlier on the test optional piece. So I'm going to go around and would love to hear from each of you on, did your institution utilize a test optional policy this year? And what are the plans for that for the future? If you did, then, what percentage of students were admitted who applied via that test optional route? How did you see your process impacted by it? And any advice for students who are kind of contemplating that? And I think we're going to talk about the test optional piece, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the last two questions, because I know a lot of students, this is something that is certainly on their mind, is test optional, its future, and its impact.
So today, I was hoping they announced it before this panel so that I could share. Lehigh has decided to continue to keep up that test optional policy for both the 2022-23 year and then 2023 and 2024. This is with the exception of our accelerated program with SUNY optometry. So if you're a student interested in that, it's a small group of students, but just in case, we are still requiring testing for that. This doesn't impact English proficiency. I'm sure, you attend this school. That does not apply to you, but just in case. And what we're kind of saying is we're urging students to consider how to demonstrate their college readiness. So for some students, standardized tests will reflect your ability to perform well in a rigorous academic environment, but for other students, not so much. So my piece of advice is to look at a school that you're interested in, look at their middle 50% of their standardized test scores if they have them. If you fit into that and you feel that the SAT or the ACT adds to your application, send it to us. But if you feel that it doesn't, don't send it to us, because at Lehigh, if you send it, we're using it. We're not going to say, oh, they shouldn't have said it, so we're not going to use it. We have to use it. We practice holistic admissions. So really think about it. And I think a lot of students were scared not to send it because you're worried that we would think, oh, they didn't send it because they did poorly. That's not the case. I did not miss testing this past year at all. But another piece of advice, if you're thinking about applying to a STEM specific engineering program or a math heavy program, and you didn't have the opportunity to take calc or some advanced math course and your SAT math score is really high, maybe that's something you consider as well. So it's kind of up to you. I know that it's very scary. But from my personal perspective, I didn't find myself really missing testing when it wasn't provided. And when it was there, it was just kind of a normal thing. So got to balance it.
I'll be quick about this. Kathy, I see you're at the ready. So yeah, I'll be really quick. At Ithaca College, we've been test optional since 2012. We will continue to be test optional. As a former teacher of the arts, I will not go on my soapbox about how I feel about standardized testing, but Ithaca College really reflects that philosophy, that we feel that we can assess your potential for success on our campus better with a holistic review of all of the other pieces of your application rather than a test score on one Saturday out of your life. So that said, my recommendation is, it's really up to you if you want to submit the score. It's usually about 50-50 in terms of students who choose to submit and students who don't. This past year is probably closer to 70-30, many more students not submitting test scores. My recommendation is always, if you feel your test score will enhance or complement your application, then feel free to submit it. But if you feel any other way about it, you absolutely don't need to submit it, because although I say test optional, I really should say test blind, because even if you submit that information, we're not using it to make final admission decisions. So there's that.
That's actually a great distinction. I wasn't going to jump in about that, but you should know which schools are using it and which aren't. So Lindy said Lehigh was, Duke does. Jenny said that Ithaca doesn't look at it at all. That's also quite notable. Right before I came into this program, I was viewing a webinar or a meeting where a secondary school official said to the panelists, and I was not one of them, what are you doing in test optional? We all know that, testing determined everything. And everybody on the panel just kind of stopped and looked and said, no, actually testing determined very little. And so it really, I think, resonated with me, because what we found is that our process really can never be determined just by testing, because so many students, frankly, have really high testing and wonderful grades and wonderful curricula. And so it's often looking at all the other pieces together, that holistic review that we've all talked about, where students are really distinguishing themselves. One thing I will note that we did not anticipate, but probably should have, is that there was a strong correlation between students who sent test scores that happened to be strong and who were otherwise also really strong candidates. So while we haven't reported acceptance rates for students with or without testing, we've been pretty forthcoming about the fact that we do have a higher acceptance rate for those who submitted testing, but it wasn't the submission of the testing that made the difference. It was more that they were overall stronger candidates. So that's something that we were a little bit surprised by. But at the end of the day, the decisions really were made based on everything else. And then for those with testing that was strong, that was like the add-on, much like, maybe sending an art supplement would be, or some additional letter of recommendation, or our optional alumni interview. So it just became an extra factor rather than the deciding factor.
Yeah, I just don't have much to add, because I agree with everything that my colleagues had to say. Indiana specifically, though, this was our first year going test optional, but we made this decision prior to the pandemic. So we are, for the foreseeable future, we are test optional. We really liked the way our admissions process ran this year. Again, it's an added piece. It's not the only piece. We review holistically. So it was not the make or break point for a student's application. I think the one thing, and I think Jenny hit the nail on the head with this, is that we expected about a 50% students that would opt not to send in test scores. Well, that actually increased this year, which was not something we were anticipating, but it was a good increase. I feel we offered admission to more students this year than I think we had in the past. The one thing I will encourage students to do is make sure you are checking individual schools as far as, if they are test optional, what does that mean if you're applying to a specific major? And I know it's been mentioned a little bit before. IU, you are still being considered for merit awards, and you are still being considered for direct admission to specific programs, even if you apply without test scores. However, sometimes that means there's additional information that is required. And I know particularly in this area, the Kelley School of Business is a big school for us, and if you chose to apply without test scores, you needed the additional step of petitioning the Kelly school. So take a look at certain guidelines like that with schools that you're interested in. They may be test optional, but there may be other pieces for certain schools that you need to take additional steps for.
Thank you. And in terms of other news and testing, any news from your institutions on the super scoring of the ACT, or any changes to the awarding of AP credit given the changes to the AP testing this year, digital and home, and all of those options? Anything new on either of those fronts to share?
We actually don't super score the ACT. We just use the ACT composite score. We do super score the SAT. Okay, so just to make that point, AP exams this year, we take scores. If you get a grade of 4 or 5 on the AP exam, Rutgers will give you credit. And we didn't see, I know there was some question that there might be some differences in evaluating, but it really worked out that there really weren't any differences, and they were able to maintain giving, offering students credit for 4s and 5s. So we would anticipate that going forward.
Yeah.
So Duke actually does super score the ACT, and so we anticipate that that will continue. I know there was a little bit of back and forth this year from the ACT about whether they would allow students to do separate subtests on different days, and I believe they took that option off the table. At least that was the last I heard. If something changed while I was on vacation the past 4 days, it seems to happen a lot with the testing agencies, that it is, every day is new news. So we will continue to do that for students who have taken it more than once. If you are able to somehow fit that in, we do do an average to get up to whatever the new composite is. And then the AP credit is being awarded by our academic dean's offices, and that has stayed the same from the last several years.
We're the same as Duke for the most part. So we super score, and the AP credit has also stayed the same, awarding the AP credit.
Ditto for Ithaca College.
And Brandy?
Same for Indiana.
Great, thank you. We're gonna move to Q&A. I'm gonna cheat and go to the top though, because as we were talking about these different components of the applications and the testing piece, I know something else that has come up from our juniors is about letters of recommendation and who they're asking, because some students have been in the building and have met their teachers and had that in-person contact junior year. Others have not had that type of contact with teachers in sophomore year. So is there any preference for those of you that take letters of recommendation in terms of who these students are asking this year to write these letters for them?
I'll go ahead and jump in. We have sort of historically said junior and senior year teachers are your better choices because it is your most recent work, usually the most rigorous. I think we're going to probably throw a little bit of that out the door, because junior and senior year for you students will be really unusual. Hopefully back in person a little bit more this coming year as seniors, but even then you're applying to colleges after only 1 semester at the most with that person as a teacher. So, the teachers who know you best is always our best advice in academic subject areas. I actually just responded to a question from a college school counselor about teachers are worried about how are we going to write letters of recommendation. And so in my dialogue with her, I suggested that maybe the teachers just kind of create their own little checkbox that they put at the top of every application that says how I taught this student: virtually, in person, hybrid, large class, small class, like whatever that teacher or your school perhaps, thinks about it, so that we can distinguish between students who have had different kinds of classroom experiences. And then in the recommendations that I read where students were learning virtually, I was really impressed by the way that teachers were able to do just like what they do in every other letter, which is finding an anecdote or a way in which you really contributed in that class. So whether it was virtually, whether it was in person, there are still ways for students to make themselves stand out. And so I always say that the work of the recommendation is really the students, that it's their job to give the teacher something to write about. So keep that in mind, whether you're at a screen and you're joining in that way, whether you're quieter and so your work shows through in writing. I actually think that in some ways the impersonal piece of virtual learning may give students who are more reticent in the classroom some confidence to speak out. And so this could be a way of a different kind of student emerging as particularly strong. So, there's always ways to look at it positively. So I would encourage you to kind of dig a little bit with that. And then of course, give those teachers something to write about.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, sorry. I keep doing that. I got to do that with each panelist at some point tonight. I'll try to be quick. I think those are really, really great recommendations, pun intended, Kathy. Definitely, choose an adult who knows you well and can speak to who you are academically, but also as a person. And so again, from the Ithaca College perspective, we require one letter of recommendation. It should be someone who can speak to academically, but we know we all went through a similar thing the last year plus. So we know that you're going to have teachers who, taught you remotely or don't know you in person. And that's okay. I can't tell you how many recommendations I read that started with, I've never met this student in person, but here's what I can tell you about them. And that's absolutely okay. And then I would also say, again, from my perspective at Ithaca College, sometimes the teacher who knows you best is not necessarily going to be your biology teacher. It might be your art teacher because you had them for 4, 5, 6 years. It could be your band director. So just keep in mind that, it's okay to think outside the box. So different colleges might want different things, but from our perspective, the person who knows you best might not necessarily be your senior year English teacher. So we're just looking for someone who can really speak confidently about who you are, whether they know you in person or virtual. That's really okay.
And I'm just going to say that at Rutgers will make your life very easy and not require letters of recommendation at all. So there you go.
I was actually just going to quote you from earlier, Jenny, just saying that we all went through this. So submitting a teacher recommendation from a teacher from your first year or your second year of high school, we're not going to look at that and say, oh, and kind of toss it along. We all know what happened. We were all there too. So I'm glad you brought that up again. I was just going to reiterate what you said earlier too.
Thank you. We have Lauren, we have Mrs. Kruger and Mr. Carmenini who are manning the Q&A here. Are there any topics you've seen in there that we haven't quite covered?
I do have a question from someone who asked if there is a different acceptance rate for in-state students versus out-of-state students.
I can jump in here. We are Indiana is a large public state institution, but I wouldn't say it's a difference. Overall, we have about a 75% acceptance rate. So being that we are a state school, of course, we do have preference for Indiana students, but overall, we're still at a 75% acceptance rate. So no. Would be my overall answer to that. There's not a difference.
Yeah, and as another state school, I'll say this basically the same thing. We are the state university. About 87% or so, 85% of our students do come from New Jersey. So we are really home to our state residents. Of course, we do want students from all over the country and all over the world because that does create a really interesting learning environment for our New Jersey students, right? So there may be times where we show a little flexibility with somebody who's coming from, someplace else, but as a matter of like strict policy, I would say no, it's really the same, admission requirements for in-state versus out of state.
That is the same for Ithaca College. We are a private institution, but where you come from does not affect the acceptance rate. We actually have about I think it's 48% of our student population comes from the state of New York, but 52% comes from outside of New York, and 12% of our student population comes from the great state of New Jersey. So we're happy to have you.
I'll just note, sometimes people think that Duke has that kind of in-state, out-of-state thing because we're just located right down the road from UNC Chapel Hill, but we are also private, and actually 87% of our students come from outside of North Carolina. So there is no in-state, out-of-state difference. And New Jersey is certainly well represented, usually in the top 5 or 6 schools in our student body, or states in our student body.
Yeah, same for the most part. I actually think, although Lehigh is located in Pennsylvania, I actually think that New Jersey is our #1 for where most of our students come from. Sorry, my dog is whining. She's like, it's dinner time. But yeah, just to echo everyone else there, or just to echo Kathy, I guess, there's not a difference for us.
Any other questions coming in?
Yes. So one of the questions that I received was, will you require vaccinations for students who are looking to attend the institution?
There's been an ongoing, I know the answer for Duke is yes. And there has been a group list that I keep seeing pop up on my various education feeds that I'm part of, that there is someone keeping track of this. So somebody at the national level, whether it's through our College Admissions Officers Association, but it should be pretty easy to find in working with the College Counseling Office to see which schools will require it, which schools don't. But Duke is one that will.
Yep, Rutgers will also be requiring it of any student who's going to come to campus. So even if you're a commuter student, if you're going to be taking classes on campus, you will be required to be vaccinated. There are going to be some exceptions for people with religious or medical issues. Obviously we don't want, we're hoping, not too many people will be looking to do that. We do want kind of a herd immunity type situation. I said before, 16,000 people. In residence halls, you can't have 16,000 people in residence halls if you get a lot of people sick. So the vaccine, I think, is going to be really important to getting us back to some level of normalcy. Yeah, I feel like I had another thought and it's gone now, so.
I'll just share that the answer for Ithaca College is also yes, with exceptions for sincere medical or religious reasons.
Same for Lehigh.
Indiana was supposed to officially come out with word today, but I've been checking my email and that has not yet officially come across my desk. My gut is that, given especially that my fellow Big Ten with Rutgers, the answer is yes, that Indiana will also be yes, of course, following similar guidelines as far as exemptions, very few. And if a student needs the vaccine, we will be able to provide that for the student once they arrive on campus.
Other questions coming in, Mr. Carmenini, Mrs. Kruger?
Sorry, my dog is barking very loudly. So one of the questions that I received are, what are some of the top qualities that you place as important for acceptance when reviewing a candidate?
That is, we're all like not able to answer because that's such a such a big question.
I figured I'd throw it out there just in case.
Yeah, I mean, so at Ithaca, we do engage in a holistic review. However, your transcript is the backbone of your application. So we need to make sure that you are, have potential for success at a collegiate level. And the other thing I'd say that we're looking for, especially for Ithaca College type students, we're looking for students who are open-minded and want to try lots of different things, because we're a residential campus, sort of like we were just talking about with Rutgers. So we want to make sure that our campus community is, enhanced by all the students that come. And so that means participating in lots of different things inside and outside the classroom.
anything to add or any other questions coming in? Mr. Carmenini, I think you're muted.
I have a question about the impact on choice of major and admission. So maybe each of you can talk a little bit about how that might impact your admissions to the school.
That's a great question. So yeah, I think you'll probably get some different answers from the different schools up here. For Rutgers, if you're applying so I said before, you can apply to there's 7 schools in New Brunswick that you can apply to. You can apply to up to 3 on one application. Only 3 of those schools are you actually being admitted into a major, a specific major, if you're admitted, right? So if you're applying to the School of Pharmacy or the School of Nursing, they only have one major, right? Pharmacy and nursing. So you're in that program. If you're applying to our Fine and Performing Arts School, Mason Gross, there's 6 programs. You have to specifically apply to one. You have to audition or present a portfolio. So you're admitted to that one specific program. Okay, so those 3 schools, you are, by virtue of their way they're structured, you're being evaluated and admitted into one program. All of our other schools, arts and sciences, business, engineering, School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, you are just admitted to the school. You are not admitted to a major. So even engineering, right? You're admitted to the School of Engineering. There's 10 different programs to choose from, but you're actually not going to choose your engineering major till the end of your first year. So you're not being admitted into a major. We do ask on the application for you to indicate what your intended major is, okay? Because occasionally it is important. But again, I do want to stress that we're not admitting you into computer science. We're not admitting you into English. And so it's not harder or easier to get in, based on what you put down as your potential major. So yeah, in most situations, you're not declaring your major till either the end of your first year or sometime during your second year.
I'll go ahead and jump in for Duke. So we have 2 undergraduate schools, our Arts and Sciences College and our School of Engineering. And you do select one or the other of those. You have to pick one. You can't apply to both. And you will be reviewed in the context of those schools. I will say that the admission criteria, the admission rates, all of that are going to be pretty similar. So you should apply to the one that most closely matches what you hope to do. Although once you get to Duke, you can change your mind and switch into the other school. But beyond that, you will have until your sophomore year to declare your major. So we really are liberal arts focused, meaning that we want you to come in and do a little experimenting. We don't expect you to have made up your mind fully until you've had a chance to explore some programs that have not been on your radar, perhaps, before you've come to college. So just one of the 2 schools, but majors really don't make any difference in our evaluation.
At Ithaca, you do apply directly to a specific major, and so we will review you with that major in mind. And some majors will have very specific requirements like theater, arts, physical therapy, occupational therapy, kind of depends on the program. Because we're liberal arts, many of our programs, actually the vast majority, we sort of use the same, we review through a similar lens, but like I said, we do have some competitive programs or professional programs that require a different lens. We do have an exploratory program, which is for students who are undecided or undeclared. And so we ask students to apply directly to that program. But in general, the review process is very, very similar, but might depend just a little bit, again, if you're choosing one of those more selective or competitive majors.
So at Indiana, we do not make admissions decisions based upon major. So when you apply, you are applying to the university as a whole. Similar to Rutgers, we do have 12 schools, and of those 12 schools, 10 of them do offer direct admission where you are admitted to the school, not the major. And that is an automatic process. So you are admitted to Indiana University first, and then you are looked at for your specific major. So it is a possibility to be admitted to Indiana, but not to your specific major. There's nothing separate you have to do unless you are applying to, say, our Jacob School of Music, where there is that additional application, interview, performance piece. Other than that, about 60% of our students come to Indiana without being directly admitted to a program. So they are looking at entering that major at the end of the freshman or sophomore year. Again, very strong liberal arts focus where we want you to be able to explore and really decide what is out there with flexibility.
For Lehigh, when you apply to Lehigh, you pick one of our 4 undergraduate colleges to apply directly into. And again, I think on the common application, you can list potential majors, but we're just looking at you for admission into that specific college. So the only one of those that has one major in it is our new College of Health, and the only major in our College of Health right now is population health. So if you apply to the College of Health, then you're automatically in that program. But for the rest of our schools, like a lot of the other schools here, you can't declare your major until after at least your first year, again, to give you a chance to explore different academic passions.
And maybe we'll take, I know we're starting to run over, so maybe we'll just do one more. If there is one.
Give me 1 second, I'm so sorry. Okay, so some of the colleges have combined degree programs. So for example, like law and business, are these applications reviewed differently, or how are they reviewed for combined degree programs?
So we have 3 specific intercollegiate programs. So I just talked about the 4 colleges, but we have 3 of those intercollegiate programs. And without going into too much detail, if you're interested in any of those 3, you actually do have to apply directly into them if you would like to be considered for them. So we review you for that program, and if we find that you aren't a fit, your application will then drop down into the pool for whichever school you picked as a backup. So for example, we have an integrated degree with engineering and arts and sciences, so you can apply directly into that. We call it the Ideas program. And if you are not a fit, you would have either selected the College of Arts and Sciences or the College of Engineering as a backup. So that's for us. Those are the combined programs that we have.
We do have a few combined programs as well. I mentioned before, physical therapy, occupational therapy, music education and performance, exercise science, athletic training, things like that. And so for those programs, they have some program specific application requirements, and that information can be found on our website. But those are programs where we typically say, sometimes students will say, well, I'm not sure if I want to go into that program. I might be something interested in something else. And those are programs that are they're pretty intensive and strict in terms of the way that they're designed. And so those are programs where we say, if you're at all interested in, for example, the combined bachelor's and doctoral physical therapy program, apply directly to it, because it's much easier to transfer out of that program than it is to transfer in. So that would be sort of my biggest piece of advice. If you're interested in any of those programs, learn about them. I can help you learn about them, but to definitely apply directly to them. And then if you change your mind later, that's much easier than trying to get into them at a later time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rutgers, the joint accelerated type programs are things that you're typically applying for in your first year, sophomore year, or junior year at Rutgers. It really just depends on the program. So there's really not one that I can think of in New Brunswick that you're applying to directly out of high school. The only thing I can think of, and it's at Rutgers Newark, they do have a 7-year BA/MD program. And that is, the student would apply directly out of high school. If they're admitted to Rutgers Newark and the New Jersey Medical School. But yeah, that's the only one that comes to mind. That's a direct admit, accelerated program. That's a direct admit.
Thank you. Well, again, I just want to thank all of you for joining us and taking the time this evening. I hope, everyone who's on this call, these folks work so hard throughout the year. It's a really intense cycle for them, whether they're traveling in the fall or digging into your applications in the spring. As you can tell from what they're talking about here, they're reading everything that you're submitting and spending countless hours on it. And we are so lucky that we were able to get them on this call with us tonight to share their words of wisdom. So hopefully we'll be seeing some of you in the fall, if not in person, then virtually again, as we did this year. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. Thank you.